Welcome to the Tekamo podcast series sponsored by the best rubber tracks, tools, and part supplier on the internet, FortisHD.com. The goal of this podcast is to learn more about the realities of being a heavy equipment mechanic, whether you're considering getting into the trade or maybe you're deep into it already. What's it like to start out with a simple service truck and end up working for Tony Beats on Gold Rush? Join us as we chat with Josh from BC about his unique and adventurous career, one repair at a time. Hey, Josh.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, man.
Been keeping busy, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I have been, yeah.
Right on. So what are you up to lately?
Lately, well, this start of this year has been kind of slow for me, just starting to get back in the groove. Got a new truck rigged out and ready to hit the road again and get some work going.
Cool. So tell me about the truck.
So I had a 2000 Freightliner with a 10,000 pound crane and a 60 CFM air compressor. So I upgraded to a 5500 Dodge with a 5,000 pound crane and switched over my welder, and then I have a 70 CFM air compressor. Something a little newer, a little nicer to run around in, more space. So
how has it transpired? How'd you get to where you are right now? Like, you a contractor right now? You're independent as we speak, or are you primarily working?
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want from when I started my apprenticeship, or do you want from when I started contracting?
I want to know how you got into it. As far as I know, you have about 10 years experience. How did it all start? Bring me back to when you were a kid.
Okay, cool. So I always liked taking things apart, just stuff out of the trash. It didn't matter if it went through a flood or something. I just always was fascinated with taking things apart and seeing if I could make them work again. And then as I got older, everything got bigger. And then I started in Castlegar, that's where I was born. And I went to Nelson Selkirk College, did my first year there. And then I got my first job busting tires at Columbia Truck. I was there for about a year and I wasn't really progressing or getting what I wanted because I could only bust tires for so long, and, the owner wouldn't move me up. So then I went over to Tralex Rentals and Sales, and then, got a little bit more of my feet wet there, and it was just too slow for me, and I was kind of urgent to move out of my parents' house. So I started applying around, and I went up to Chetwynd, BC, and I got a phone call from, he was a small owner operator, rig trucks, water trucks, gravel trucks, excavators, just a little bit of everything in the oil field, right? So, I fixed my 2000 Dodge Cummins, with the that I bought, just some piece of that was $1,000 truck that I fixed up and threw all my tools in the back of it and drove up to Chetwynd.
Cool. How far of a drive was that?
That was, I think it's 1,500 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers from Castlegar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a big, first step kind of move out, experience, just all around.
That sounds like a big move. Were you prepared? Did you guys, plan how long you're going to work, where you're going to stay, or did you just kind of wing it?
So he was right away, he was kind of well, I got somewhere where you can stay. He's I got a trailer on site where you can live. And I was okay. And I was an apprentice at the time, so I was just eager for hours and everything towards my apprenticeship. And he understood that, being a mechanic. Other than that, he was just yeah, whenever you want to come up, get up here. We need guys. So I kind of winged it in a sense. My mom loaned me the $2,000 for the injection pump that my truck needed, and I just had to go. So I threw everything in the truck and went up there, and it was quite the crazy experience. Just moving out, not knowing anyone, and just moving out there and just starting to progress my career.
How long did it take from the first conversation you had with this guy until when you had your truck packed up and you were leaving?
A day?
No, really?
2 days? Yeah, man.
That's crazy.
That's yeah. It gets crazier. I promise you. So when I was up there, the first real mechanic that I ever met that was an influence to me, his name was Garth, and he was a subcontractor. And, he rolls up, he's got the big, fancy Dodge 5500, this nice red color. And I was just hooked from there, man. And
that was your dream truck, right?
Yeah, that was the dream truck. he kind of took me under his wing and like just kind of taught me a little bit everything here and there. Like, if he was under a truck rolling in main bearings, like I would go under there and like he would show me what he would do, and then he'd almost just let me take over and just kind of just kept doing that every time I could get. And and then slowly progressed into like doing repairs in the shop and then doing repairs out in the field just to keep things turning.
Approximately
And then,
what year was this?
well, I finished school in 2015, like trade school, like the first year. So maybe 2016, 2017.
And how old were you?
I was 18, 19.
So this guy takes you under his wing. You're starting to do work. Now, did he tell you about all the other people that he's experienced? Like, were you presumably you weren't the first guy to come up there thinking that, this gig is for you. So, what did he tell you about the previous people that worked there?
There wasn't a whole lot. So his dad was like a farmer and he kind of ran the service side, and Stacy was the son, and he handled like all the wheel and dealing of the oil field stuff. So there was 3 apprentices and Garth that were running this guy's company, like mechanic wise. So it was pretty fly by the seat of your pants.
Okay. How do things progress from there? How long does that last?
Okay. The first week, I remember clearly one time, one guy, like this truck driver's first day, it was a straight back international, had to be, I don't know, it was an older international. It was the guy's first day. He took the truck from me in the shop. And then the next morning, the guy didn't put his foot on the brakes. I don't know if he was super tired from working 12 hours or however many hours he did, but he drove the truck straight through the bay door the next morning.
Oh, wow.
So my first week there, like my first 3 days, I was fixing a bay door. Like that guy wrecked after the truck he took the next day. So you could imagine the kind of carnage that place was going through if that was like my first day there. And then the living experience didn't even work out because the guy I was going to be staying with in the trailer, when I came there that very first day, no one told him I was going to be living there. So he came home after a long day of work and found me like eating food at the table, thinking
awesome.
like I was eating his food, and then he totally flipped out, and then I was flipping out, and then people were being called, and they ended up just putting me up in a hotel for the time being until I got on my feet and found a place to live in Chetwynd.
That would be weird for you because nobody told you that you're living with a guy either, right? This guy comes home.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just kind of a show.
At what point did you ever have a feeling that like, what did I get myself into? Or did you just think this is par for the course?
Oh, 100%. Like as soon as like after that guy crashed his truck into the bay door, he was outside in -40 changing his tire on his truck in his underwear. Like
No
I was
way.
like, yeah. So I'm looking
awesome.
outside the door and I'm like, what am I doing here? What have I done? Like it was just crazy. Just crazy.
How many people lived in that? Like, describe the region up there. What was the main industries? Like, kind of paint us a picture there.
Chetwynd is like just a small blink of an eye town. Like if you drive past, like through it, like you blink, you miss it kind of deal. It's on your way up to Fort St. John. So it's very mountainous terrain, and like say Cascar, BC, like a lot of trees, a lot of mountains.
Okay.
Very, very cold.
What's the main industries there?
Oil and gas for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, anything to do with oil and gas mainly, and then there's obviously forestry as well, but mainly oil and gas.
Now the people up there who work up there probably are not from the region, right? Everyone comes up there to work and then they probably go back home, right?
Yeah, for the most part, I would say, yeah.
How long did that gig last? So it didn't take you long to be like, what the hell am I doing? Did you tough it out? And did you gain experience? Like, how did that work out?
I did. So I stayed for over a year. Like the main priority for me was to work as much as I could and to gain hours towards my apprenticeship to go back to school for my second year. So that was the main priority. And I stayed there until I had about 2,500 hours, and then I figured it was, time to go back to school, and there was nowhere around there for me to go back to school, so I went to school in Kelowna.
So you worked under Garth for that long? Would you call him a mentor? Like, how did that work out? Did you gain a lot of experience? I know you got hours, but that's hours and experience, maybe two different things, right?
Right. No, I definitely learned a lot from Garth. Like, he was definitely my mentor and still is to this day. So
That's awesome. What was the craziest thing that you saw in that year? Was there memorable events, or was there anything that you're like, wow, like for good and for bad?
I think it's all good. Like, no one got hurt, and it's just like kind of a crazy story to tell. But like, just the sheer amount of carnage, I guess. Like, just people. Like, one lady kept her trailer brakes applied and then just drove until there was no trailer tires left on her like on her trailer. Like,
Oh wow.
guys getting like a service truck, like buying from auction and then like rolling the next week, like just totaling it off.
Inspection gone wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't know it didn't have brakes. Cool. So, and then what type of equipment did you work on during that year? Did you get a good variety of different stuff?
A lot of truck and trailers, and then some excavators like 330 Hitachi excavators, and then some 870 John Deere graders. More preventative maintenance, boosting, starting, oil changes, stuff like that.
So after that year, what would you say that you were very confident working on? Like, did you get more experience on one thing over the other? Did you become an expert, or proficient in a certain type of repair?
Not in a certain type of repair, more of just like a situation to overcome and adapt and try to get the job done in a timely manner, to be honest. Because there was just such a variety of everything, like from preventative maintenance to some engine overhauls to cylinder heads to salvage.
Do you remember a time where you solved something kind of on your own, where you're like, man, that's awesome, like, I'm proud of myself, like, good job, pat on the back? Do you ever remember something like that during that time?
I think having like going out to a truck that wouldn't start, and then like getting that satisfaction of getting that truck to start, like that was like, yeah, you know what, like I'm on the right track, I'm doing the right things, I'm progressing, I'm learning.
Cool, right on. Now you're a year out of that. You go back and continue school. You go to Kelowna. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
so how did things go from there?
So I met a shop foreman in Kelowna. He was actually doing his schooling as well. Like, he was kind of one of those old guys that never really went and got his schooling done, had lots of experience, but just never had the schooling. So I met up with him, and he worked at Gem Diesel, which was the Volvo Mac dealer in Kelowna and still is.
So you did you go to school just because you had to, or what, did you learn anything there? What was the
Like, I felt like I just needed, that was like my next level of progression, right? Like, I didn't feel like if you don't have the knowledge behind it, you can have some experience, but you need to know how the fundamentals of everything work to, kind of piece everything together. So second year is engines mostly, and drivelines. So that's what I was in school for at that time. And then when I met Dave, he introduced me to the service manager, and I ended up getting my next job at the Volvo Mac dealership. And then that's where I stayed for the majority of my apprenticeship for my truck side. So that lasted for a few years, and then I got my ticket. And then lo and behold, like, I kept in touch with Garth, and he actually got headhunted to go down to the Bahamas and work.
cool?
Yeah, and he was like, "Hey man," reached out to me, we keep in touch, like, Christmas time, New Year's, Happy New Year, whatever. He's like, "Did you get your ticket?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did." He's like, "Well, they need guys down here, so and all you need is a red seal." So he's like, put me in touch with the service manager of Bahamas Hot Mix, and then next thing I know, like, as everything progresses, like, I'm on a plane and I'm going down to the Bahamas to work on construction and paving equipment.
That's crazy. So when Garth called you, was he already down there?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't just like, hey man, I'm thinking about doing this. He's actually down there. He knew what to expect, and so he called you up.
Yeah, so when I went off to school for my second year, he actually was like, this is kind of what I'm doing. But you're at the time, you're 19 and you're like, oh yeah, whatever, sure, you're gonna go down to the fucking Bahamas
Yeah.
and work or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then it actually happened.
Cool. So he had been planning that, I guess, for a while, or he thought about it. And so he goes down there, does it. When you get the call from Garth, hey, come down, how long was it? What happened there? Did you go to your work and say, hey, I'm moving on?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Like Chris and Brett were the owners of, right? Like again, like really small mom and pop shop orientated dealership, and they completely understood. Like of course they didn't love it because they invest a lot of time and training towards me as a dealership mechanic, and they hate to lose that, but they understood.
Cool. So they kind of let you fly away, and so walk me through the experience. So how long was it before you were on a plane down to the Bahamas?
So it was quite a slow, grueling process, like just with immigration and all the paperwork and everything for what they had to receive. So it was like all surreal. Like I got the phone call, everyone like was happy, yada yada yada, and then it's like this hurry up and wait where they get all the paperwork. So it took about 6 months to get all the paperwork and everything done. And I actually shipped my tools down there,
Wow.
and it was about 6 months until I was like on the plane and flew down to NASA there. And
And so when did you ship your tools down?
when they were sending me the ticket, they were like, your tools would probably take 4 weeks to get here. So
Okay.
once I kind of had a plane ticket, or they had an idea of the ticket that was coming, that's when I shipped my tools.
Tell me how you negotiated with the person that hired you there. How did that go? How much are you going to make? What are the terms of employment there? Are you a contractor? Are you an employee? How much are you making? Did you just kind of like go down and you cared more about the experience probably, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, like at the time I was trying to, become a contractor. Like I was buying a service truck at the time. And it was like kind of a dilemma. I was like, well, what do I do? And my parents were obviously a big factor in that, right? They're like, you have to go to the Bahamas. Like no one gets this opportunity to like be an expat, like go down and work in the Bahamas. So as far as like negotiating for wages and everything, like I kind of knew what mechanics made in Canada and everything, and he was like, we're gonna pay you journeyman wage for all of your education and your schooling and everything. So it was a very good wage. It was very good, to be honest, for that, for me at the time. I think I was like 20, 22, 23, to and then that experience alone to go down there and do that and have them pay for it and have for them to pay me to come down there, I think it would have been crazy not to do.
So you're pretty fortunate to have that opportunity then.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so what was your average day like? Obviously, if you're working in a beautiful place like that and you never get time to enjoy it, then what's the point? But walk me through a week.
They have their own asphalt plant, is like an all-around construction company, but they had the contract to pave the second runway on NASA. So that was our main job source there, was paving the runway. So everything down there is like 20 years in the past. Like they don't have like the technology like we do here. Everything is slower paced compared to here. Yeah, so like there's no doors or anything on the shop because everything's so hot and humid and it rains all the time. We're running around in like pickups. Like we don't have service trucks like how we do here with cranes, welders, compressors, and everything else. So you really got to think outside the box and be MacGyvery when you want to repair something out there. Like we have modern equipment, but don't really have modern amenities to fix our equipment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that you got to be resourceful, like MacGyver, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like you got to use ratchet straps and like poles and other pieces of equipment, and like dig a ditch, or if you got to, it's like just crazy. You just got to think way different. Like I can't just like, oh, pull up my crane and do this job. So
And probably supplies or tools or whatever are, a lot more difficult to get on an island, right?
for sure, yeah, it's a lot more difficult to get.
How long had the company been in business for? Obviously, the runway projects is a big project, but you say they're established there.
I think BHM's been established for more than 25 years.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so, though a big project, that's kind of how they roll. There's probably not a ton of work. That's probably one of the biggest projects they've done, I presumably, right?
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah, that was a massive project for them. Like everyone else you see they didn't have, even though like I wouldn't consider them state of the art. Like if you go around and look at some of the other smaller outfits, it's like, well, we were state of the art compared to everyone else there.
Like whenever I travel, I notice things. I'm like, why don't we do, or why do they do that here? Why don't we do that where we are? But did you ever, was there anything that you said, hey, like, why don't they do it this way? It would be so much better.
Yeah, like I think people just get stuck in the way of, like we've been doing it this way forever, I think, and they get like, we've been doing this way for so long, it's worked. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, and especially in a place like that developing country, or Latin America or whatever, Africa, they've got their ways of doing it, and that's just but do you ever wonder if, like, hey, did you know you could do this? And they're like, oh yeah. Like,
Oh yeah,
did
yeah.
you
Like
feel comfortable like presenting them with new ideas?
so one example would be is like when you were to go to bolt up a clutch or something like on an 18 speed, they would like the a lot of the Jamaicans or Bahamians, they would bolt the clutch up to the flywheel first, and then and instead of that, like normally here we put the clutch on the input shaft and then bolt up the transmission so you're not fighting it. So I would make that suggestion when it came to work and such, and then vice versa with same things with them to me, and we would share that experience like mechanics, right? And like like just people to one another, trying to make the job more efficient, our life's better getting the job done, right?
Yeah. So you learned stuff from them as well as taught them different ways, right?
Yeah, because like I would say like Fuzzy and Mr. Barrington or Paul were the three, Jamaican mechanics that I met there. And those guys don't go to school. Like they're all like generational of mechanics, and they're all self-taught and doing things differently, and so that was quite the experience.
Cool. And aside from work, is there anything they did, like any cultural things that you noticed that really stood out? Even
We drank a lot of beer.
cool. That's a universal thing, I think.
Yeah.
But pretty fun people to work with.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure, 100%. Like they like to have a good time and they like to work hard, and yeah, same as us.
How long did that gig last?
So I was there in 2019, and then COVID happened actually. So I was stuck down there during COVID.
Oh wow. That's either a
Once
good thing or
every
a bad thing.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of terrifying because like by the time my manager said, he's like, if you want to get on a plane and leave, it was already too late.
Wow.
And I was stuck there. And yeah. So once everything got opened back up, I kind of didn't know what was happening or what was going on. So I took the opportunity to cut my contract short by 2 months because it was like you're a yearly basis the way you're
Oh wow.
contracted down there.
And
Yeah.
so
So
despite COVID, you were still getting paid, right?
like as mechanics and everything, like the projects got shut down for a short amount of time, but I think I only had 6 days off during COVID, and then we were kind of put back to work with permits and like privileges, right? Like as COVID progressed.
Did they lock, like, you presumably know what happened here. Did they lock everyone down there as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, hardcore like checkpoints. Like I wasn't allowed to go to work without like a permit issued from Bahamas Hot Mix. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that must be the perspective of going through that there would be a lot different than Canada or the US or wherever else, right?
Yeah.
Such a small place.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a time that everyone thought that everyone was gonna die, and then 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then the rest is history. Now you cut it short a couple months because obviously COVID lasted a long time. Was it because of the uncertainty around what was happening?
Yeah, it was just the uncertainty and being stuck there, and I didn't know what was going to happen, so I figured it would just be best to cut it short and jump on a plane and come home.
If that never happened, would you have stayed longer?
I think I would have stayed longer for sure. Yeah.
Is there a certain point in which it becomes repetitive, and or did you like that gig? Like you said, you would have stayed longer, but
I think I would have just stayed out to the term of my contract. Just because, like I said, like everything down there is slower, like a little, like, we'll do it later,
yeah.
and just the technology behind everything, right? Like I had ambitions back here and to be back home to eventually run my own service truck and everything, right? So I had those ambitions in the back of my mind.
How old were you when you got the thought in your head that you would run your own thing, whatever it was going to be? Were you always entrepreneurial?
Not always. Like when I saw Garth and like just his lifestyle and how he rolled, and like when I saw him back when I was a first year apprentice, I was like, you know what, that's what I want to do.
And so how's your perspective changed then from you obviously, you see this as a younger kid, unexperienced, and you get inspired, super nice truck, good lifestyle. Like how has reality changed what you feel about it now? Are you still, like is it harder than you thought it was going to be? What would you like to do that you're not doing now? Like, do you want to hire more people, build a fleet? What's your, I know that's a lot of questions I just asked, but how did it change? How did your perspective change from what you thought you wanted till what reality is now?
I think it's definitely been harder. It's just in ways that I couldn't see, like, or perceive at the time, or things that I would thought would be a problem. I don't know if I would change anything. Like as I continue to grow, everything that I've wanted is coming into play. It's just a lot slower than what I would like it. I guess we're all a little impatient in that way.
How are you impatient?
Just of growth and how the speed of everything. It doesn't always work the way you want it to sometimes, and you just have to like adapt and overcome things. And it's sometimes you hit bumps in the road, and sometimes you don't. Right? So it's
You have obviously something in mind and it's not happening quick enough. Is that is that kind of what you're saying?
yeah, like when you mention like employees and everything, like that's it. It really that's what kind of the goal was. And then I had an opportunity this summer where I had like more of a manager aspect of a role, or like an equipment field service manager position, I guess you would call it, up in the Yukon, working for Tony Beats of all people, like another, like I don't know if you've seen the TV show Gold Rush,
Yeah.
but he's
Yeah.
the main character. Yeah, so I worked for Tony Beats this summer.
On the on the same mine, the same property?
Yeah, 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 for Tony Beats in the Indian River and the Yukon. So
Were you on the show at all?
yeah, yeah.
Cool. And how was that experience?
It wasn't anything like I was expecting. Like I thought it was just gonna be kind of like another job where I was gonna go to like receive instructions to repair equipment and then, fill in as needed. But when I got there, it wasn't like that at all. It was just not what I was expecting. I get down there and there's one other mechanic, and there's not a whole lot of guidance or leadership in that point, like other than, like, okay, I need this done or that done. But like it almost seemed like as the season got on further and further, like, more mechanics showed up, and then they were like, okay, well, what do we do? And then I was kind of the guy that overseed the role and took charge, I guess. It was just a very weird, it wasn't something that I was normally comfortable with, or just because it was a new role. And it's not like someone pulled me aside and was like, okay, this is going to be your job. You're going to handle everything and progress that way. Right. It was all kind of just thrown at me, and I just took it in stride. And, you make mistakes along the way, but I guess you learn quickly, I guess, and keep moving forward.
So your expectation was a little bit more guidance, but instead you were kind of thrown in and you got to figure it out, right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And like being in the Yukon, like there's no one to come save you out there. Like we were like 2 hours from like the nearest paved road, and like you're down in the bush, and there's no cell reception or anything down there. Like you gotta figure it out. So
So how did your previous experience, in work and professional life, did it set you up for success there?
I think so. When it came to repairing equipment, like that's always come pretty naturally to me to repair equipment. It was the more so of, how to manage or how to deal with other situations where other people were involved, right? Like for an example, like I had a Great West sent out an apprentice who's never been in a field truck before. Like I was given the role of, giving him work to do, right? And what would be the most beneficial way for, like, that's going to give me production out of him, and then like what is going to be productive for him and his ability to learn and grow as an apprentice, right? Because like that's the whole thing, like why we get into this is to pass our knowledge down, right? And to have other people come up and eventually take over or be better than us. So that's always running through my mind. um and he actually ended up getting hurt. Like he's only there for 10 days, and on his sixth day he ended up dropping, like doing something simple. He went to go change a sensor on a transmission on a Volvo, and there's about a quarter-inch plate he was taking off, and he was ended up smiling and then dropping the plate on his face and knocked out his front tooth. Yeah, so like just dealing with a situation like that, and like you looking back on it, it's like, okay, well, was I responsible? Should I have been overseeing him more? Like maybe not so much the operation, because like there's like 30 to 40 pieces of equipment working at a time, and there's three mechanics there that like not everyone is at the skill level that I'm at, and or some people are and some people aren't. So should I have helped him more? Like, like those are things that are always running through my mind, especially when someone gets hurt. It wasn't serious, like enough, like it wasn't catastrophic in that sense. Like he ended up being okay. And I was actually there when it happened, like in the relative vicinity, and got him, help and everything. But like that's always stuff that's kind of running through my head.
And so that accident, do you think that had, obviously you said he only lasted 10 days. Did he didn't come back after that, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, he didn't. He ended up staying at his other branch that he came from.
How long did that experience last on that mine?
So I was there. Tony called me um in May, and then we ran until the ground froze up. So we were there until October.
And what was your shift there?
I worked, well, they want like 2 months on and 2 weeks off, but I was there pretty much all the time. Like my last rotation there, I was there for 70 days. I worked 70 days straight.
Wow. And so you must be learning a lot of stuff being thrown in a situation like that. You said there's three mechanics there. Is there anyone else that can mentor you that you learn from?
For sure. Like there was another mechanic, his name was Fabian, and he had more training on the Volvo equipment than I had. So I could give him a call for sure and have a little bit of guidance if I needed it. But he was up at the other site, and I was down at the Indian River, and he was at the hill. So it was limited, right? Because he's busy as well, because he has another mechanic under him. And
So how does a guy like Tony find out about you? How did you get the call? Did it come through Garth or someone else?
I'm always on Indeed looking for new opportunities or what's going on in the market and everything. And I'll send out applications, and I think that's how they found me, because that's the only way I found them. And they actually called me a year later.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't right away. It was kind of a slow burn in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that before. Put an Indeed ad out for, accountant or whatever, and you try someone out for 6 months and it doesn't work out. And yeah, you're going through all the 100 people that applied and scrambling, looking for the best people. So that's interesting. So
Yeah.
so then the Bahamas gig ended what in 2021 then?
About that. Yeah.
Where did you end up? So you come back from the Bahamas. It's COVID, but obviously there's still work going on. Did you go straight to the gold mine?
I wanted to really, like, after I got into working on equipment in the Bahamas, that's where I really got into it. I was like, I want to switch. I want to work on equipment more than highway trucks. So I did start my company, and I got a phone call from Adam. I can't remember his last name, but he was a contractor, and he had a contract to maintain the logging equipment on the Trans Mountain Canada, or Trans Mountain pipeline.
Yeah.
So I ended up working for him running a field truck. That was like my first real taste of contracting.
Cool. So now you're working on some different stuff. Let's go back to the Bahamas. I didn't ask you what type of equipment you worked on there. Presumably pavers, but what other?
Yeah, a pretty good variety. Like they had everything from crushers to skid steers to excavators to loaders, pavers, milling machines, shuttle buggies, dump trucks, you name it. Like they had it. They had drills.
How big was the fleet? Approximately how many pieces?
I'd say hundreds probably.
Really? Wow. So there's multiple mechanics then.
Yeah, like at the main shop, I think there was at least 10.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, so you get a good variety of experience. Now you're working on the Trans Canada pipeline and or Trans Mountain.
Trans Mountain, yeah.
And are you working as a contractor at that point?
Yeah. So I was hired by hand. So I was just a guy and he, like someone else had a service truck and tools.
Okay. So you're running their truck, right?
Yeah. Running his truck, looking after Chinook Cove's logging equipment. Primarily out there, just running repairs, fixing leaks, flipping switches, preventative maintenance.
Was that a gravy train as much as it was in this region?
Oh yeah, for sure. I could only do it for 6 months. That wasn't for me.
Because it's so pathetically, well, to me, looking at that project, it was so wasteful.
Oh, so wasteful.
Like I was almost glad we didn't have much of a part of it. I think they rented some equipment, a Maruka from us, which it actually got used, which is surprising because most equipment, you drive down that project and most equipment, there's 10 excavators in a 100-yard, no 50-yard area, and they're just idling, and they dig a hole and then they bury it again, they dig it again. It was just, but that's a government project basically, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, governments waste money. That's pretty obvious, but it seems like they tried very hard to waste money more than
Yeah.
they normally do. But so you figured that project wasn't good for you, wasn't, and then so what did you do from there? Now we're getting into more recently, right?
Yeah, so I had to dispatch one of the dealerships out, Woodland Equipment, because the truck I was in was not equipped with any sort of scan tool or anything. So anything emissions related or codes that would come up, I would have to relay to the foreman, and then we would have to send out a field technician from a dealership, depending on the brand of machine, right? So I had to. It was like a 3026 Hyundai. So I ended up calling out, or we got Lee. His name was Lee, and he was in a field service truck. So I ran into him, talked to him, told him what was going on, where to be, what we were doing. And through that short interaction, we changed numbers and everything. And he was like, well, I'm actually looking on moving on, because Lee was at Woodland I think he was there for 17 years, like a long time.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I think I'm moving on. I'm like, well, oh, well, that's cool. Like I'm thinking of moving on from this because this is too slow for me. I'm not interested in the work that they're doing. So through a little bit of a process, he ended up getting me an interview and a job at Woodland. So that's where I was for the next, 3 years.
Oh, cool. Okay. So he was leaving Woodland, and then did you kind of take his spot type thing?
Yeah, like it was kind of like fill his boots in a way, even though they were really, really big boots to fill. Like I don't know how. Yeah, super knowledgeable guy. Yeah.
Cool. So and did you get a chance to work with him at all? Like did he help you transition into the position, or did he just leave when you arrived? How long did that last?
I think the transition period was like 2 to 3 weeks, like a little bit of foreshadowing and like showing me around, and yeah, so I would say 2 to 3 weeks.
And then how many other people worked at that place as well?
So in Kamloops, there's one other field mechanic. His name's Tyler. And then there was the shop foreman at the time, which was Harley. And then we had an apprentice. So there was The foreman, Tyler, and myself, and then the apprentice. So 4 people.
And then how is that? Because they're a Hyundai dealer, aren't they?
Yeah, Hyundai. Yeah.
How would you say that Hyundai has, in your experience there, have they gained market share at all? Because I think they, I mean, and I guess in Woodland, in your area, it's probably more logging equipment than construction. Is that safe to assume?
Yeah.
So it's a different market, I guess. But I have experience with some of their construction equipment. I know they had issues with the zero tail swing 145s with the Perkins engine, but their other stuff runs Cummins. Like their loaders are great, as far as I know. What are your thoughts with that and their market share, and are they a good brand in your opinion?
I liked Hyundai, to be honest. Like you said, like anything that ran Cummins, like their loaders are really strong. Like their log loaders are super strong. They run Cummins. Everything has its issues. And they, like you said, like they're primarily based on forestry, and they were trying to break out when I was towards the end of my time there. They were seemed to try to break out into construction more, a skid steer, and they were having some mini excavators that were going. And they also, I believe, they seen a haul truck come in, like one of the first ones. But they also merged with. Why am I drawing a blank on it? Anyways, yeah, but they merged. Hyundai merged. So, but they are trying to break out into construction.
Did they only merge with some equipment? Like for example, Doosan for their.
Doosan, that's who it is.
I assume that's only for a certain class of stuff that they didn't actually manufacture, right?
I think so. I think it
Okay.
would be for more of the construction side, I would
Okay.
guess.
Got it. Woodland's probably your first experience working with an actual, branded heavy equipment dealer. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
Like a more of a formal dealer environment, right?
More of a, yeah, like, well, Gem Diesel was an on-road Volvo Mac dealership. So I had them, but this was for equipment wise. This was the first.
What stood out to you like in your first while? Like, did you realize like, oh wow, this is different? Like doing, oh, we have to do it this way. Like what stood out to you as being, for good and for bad, whatever it was. Like, what were the main differences of working for a quote dealership for heavy equipment company?
Well, the trucking industry and then the equipment is industry, I find there's more money in equipment for sure. I figured that out.
What do you mean by that?
I find trucking to be there's not as much money in it. Like I find there's more money in equipment. I don't know, maybe parts, just because part sales, the manufacturing, I guess, would be a little different. Like we seem to do more for builds anyways. Like I've never worked at like Finning or anything, but like some of the guys there that were there for a long time, like Lee and Harley and Tyler, like there wasn't so much of a system set in place. Like it seemed like those guys were doing it for so long and that they've been there for such a long period of time, like they knew how to do everything. So whenever I received on like a build sheet to convert like a Hyundai excavator into a log loader, like it was all like handwritten form down, like like it wasn't like a PDF file or something I would pull up on PTT or something for Volvo or something or other. It seemed like it was a little more scaled back, like just not as technology advanced, I guess.
Probably because a lot of it is custom, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lack of technology there. But yeah, I think you mentioned maybe more money in it because obviously when you modify stuff like that, the odd semi truck, they're pretty standardized. Obviously, there's different models and different builds. I also think there in that on road trucks she seems like more competition. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Maybe that's or there's more people available to either repair them. Maybe not with a specific brand, but I guess it depends what you're doing as well.
No, that's a pretty good point. Like whenever you look up a serial number, like there seems to be way more numbers of that, like as a truck. And then like we were working on a T winch or something, and I believe it like that was like the first T winch that was ever made. And I
Okay.
was like, oh, well, that seems odd. Like I've never had like like, oh, this is the first T winch to be ever to ever be built and like for to be in production, like something new, right?
Tell me about the warranty. Did you do a lot of warranty work, or was there certain processes for warranty, whether it's paperwork that you had to do or reporting or whatever?
For sure, like for the truck side of things, there was definitely a lot more paperwork involved. Like your stories had to be pretty accurate and pretty descriptive of what was failing or what or how, and they wanted very specific measurements. And I found with the equipment side of things, maybe it's just again Hyundai that's not being a super big brand, that maybe it was not as intense. Not that it wasn't important, especially for warranty is always important, but it didn't seem to be as heavily. And then we seemed to do a lot of warranty work, and then maybe we would eat the cost a little more than billing the customer everything, right?
And that's at Hyundai versus the truck company, right?
Yeah, but from talking to other guys, like because I know, like when I was up in the Yukon, obviously dealing with Great West, because Tony's sponsored by Volvo, so he gets all his parts for free.
Yeah, that makes it a bit different when you're sponsored. The little bit different of a business model, but yeah, I guess Woodland, if you compare them with the other main dealers in the area, they're probably one of the smaller dealers. Is that safe to assume?
Of course, yeah.
I wonder how much warranty represents of the average dealer's revenue. Yeah, I always wondered how much, is revenue a profit center for dealers? Because obviously, if problems happen, the dealer fixes it and then has to bill the manufacturer, right?
Hmm.
So, in your experience, did you see that is there a profit center there or potential one?
Like I thought so. Like I had a brand new Hyundai that had, like the owner swore up and down that he was having like irregular track issues right from the beginning, and the machine only had 3,000 hours on it. And ended up being pump one that was the failure point. But it took quite a bit of time to figure out, because it wasn't doing it all the time or doing it at weird intervals, or like maybe the operator had a certain feel to it, or comparing one machine to another.
So very hard to diagnose, and probably spent a lot of time trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because you don't want to throw parts at things, and you want to accurately like diagnose it the first time and accurately diagnose it to save the customer money. I could definitely see there being a market for that. Yeah. I see, like when I worked on the Volvo stuff, like there was a lot more like than Hyundai that I found. Like I could break down a pump and actually get specific pieces of a pump that I wanted, other than like the Hyundai. And they both run the same pumps. I believe they both run Kawasaki pumps.
Yeah, and ironically, Volvo and Hyundai are both manufactured in Korea, I believe.
Yeah.
So, what about technology? It sounds like Woodland's less high tech. Is that safe to assume? And we're not picking on any companies, but just how is tech used? How has tech impacted what you do? You've been kind of doing this for close to 10 years. How has technology helped or hindered what you do?
It's helped a great deal. Like for example, like if I were looking up, say like a Cat 988, if I needed to find a specific wire, I could go into sys and I could punch in the wire number that I needed for a certain harness, and it could show me the entire breakdown and every bulkhead that the wire runs through, and I could find that actually pretty quickly, versus like printing out or having like a paper schematic, or pulling the book off the shelf. But sometimes you got to do that to make things faster. I think it's greatly enhanced that for sure.
And do you ever experience something that you're like, I wish this, I wish we could do it this way, or I wish this happened, like in whether it has to do with technology or not? Do you see any room for improvement, or does something that you run into ever bother you enough to be like, why hasn't anyone figured that out yet?
Sometimes like I feel, yeah, like why hasn't that been done yet?
at any of your past jobs, has anyone ever come to you and said, "Hey, man, like if there's anything that we can improve on, let us know"? Because it seems like you said, they just do stuff a certain way. Do you ever get asked to how to improve stuff?
No, I don't. And you know what? Like that was probably like my biggest reason of why I went out on my own to do things differently and to change things. Like even when I was at Woodland, I'm not trying to bash them or anything, and I won't use any names. Um, but like I don't know if you've ever ordered like a swing motor or something for a piece of machinery, but they're like anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 or more, or depending on what pump or motor you're ordering. Like I thought it would have been a viable option to keep things in house and to get those parts right from the manufacturer and rebuild them in house to save not only the company money but to save the customer money. And I was kind of just brushed off. And you can only, I don't know, maybe you can only take that so many times, I guess, before you stop volunteering ideas. Or some of my ideas were volunteered. Like there was electric tooling put in our product support truck, because I went out and I did a turbo on a truck. And like it's pretty much just a pickup with a canopy on it. And I was like, well, maybe not everyone's going to go out and change a turbo on this thing, but like if we had this and this, it would probably make my life easier or the next person's life easier, right? Like, so not all my ideas or options were taken, but some of them were. And I guess things just are taken in stride.
So they did listen to you. They just didn't necessarily implement everything you suggested.
Yeah, not all the time, and maybe it takes time, right? And maybe like comfort levels and relationships need to be established a little more looking back on it. Or maybe I didn't handle something as great as I should have. Or not everything, but it's just been a long time since I've heard someone ask that. That's all. Like being in this trade.
Yeah, so you'd think it would be something that you would want to ask on a relatively regular basis, like every few months, at least every 6 months to a year. Hey, how can we improve, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm surprised at the lack of, like, the people I talk to, mechanics I talk to, how the lack of communication on how to improve things, that from management. It just seems like it depends at what level, right? When you at some corporate level, their focus is different. Everyone gets so wrapped up in their own position and what they're supposed to do. Like, deviating from that is kind of like they don't even think about it because they're too busy, right?
yeah,
I think talking with your mechanics, like if you're a manager at a, service manager at a dealer, or if you're a fleet manager at a company and you've got other mechanics that work in your company and help fix stuff, it would be really smart to be like, hey, what do you see on a regular basis that you think should be changed? Are there any tools that we could buy or that we could provide that would make your life easier and would make things better for everyone, right?
yeah, 100%. You'd think that would be more common.
Yeah, but it's crazy that it's not. Okay, so you worked there, you said, for a few years, right? And then so now you're just about going on your own? Is that that's what it sounds like.
So I've been contracting for the last, I would say, year and a half. Like Woodland was the last employment.
Okay. Do you remember the moment where, I guess this is a slow thing. Were you always, did you always have a side hustle going, or is that something you were always thinking about and kind of building it up slowly and you just made the jump, right?
I started a little bit, like like maybe to gain like a little bit of success. Like, okay, you know what, like I can do this. Like I started a little bit, but to be honest, I was pretty tired from work, and I didn't really want to jeopardize that. So it ended up coming to a point where it was like, it like enough's enough. Or and like it's time, right? Like you just kind of know.
How long were you working? What did a week look like to you, like before you left there? Were you working too much? And obviously if you're working 12-hour days, it doesn't leave much time to go do your side hustle or get your business going on the side, right? You're exhausted
Yeah,
and whatever, you got a, life to deal with too. So what were your hours like in a given week?
It really varied. Like you said, sometimes I could work 12 hours and sometimes I would work 19 hours and then go to work the next day. It was all over the place. Sometimes it just depends what was going on with the sales department and what was going on in the field. And then as I slowly progressed as a field mechanic in Woodland, like I had customers start to call me more and more. And I was just like, oh, I thought that was really odd that they weren't calling, like a service manager or something, and they were calling me. So, but it varied. It did vary,
And so,
but a lot of hours.
40 hours then, which is, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that was very uncommon.
Yeah, it was pretty uncommon.
Okay, so would you say your days were at least 10 hours?
If I was in the field, I would say minimum.
Wow. Okay. And then did you work Saturdays as well? Did you work 6 days a week or
Yeah,
just
oh yeah, for sure.
hard work, long hours, 10 days, 14, 30 days on, with 0 days off? That you could do that if you want to. What are some of the benefits to you? Like what's a key thing? Obviously you've been thinking about going on your own for a long time. It sounds like you have enough experience that maybe you lack the confidence. I don't know. Or maybe you don't
Yeah.
lack anything. Maybe you just got to go do it, right? What do you think, like, what were the key reasons why you wanted to go on your own?
Well, like how you just talked about, like the whole, ideas and, like that was a huge part of it too. And then maybe as a mechanic, maybe you're not like you think you'd be appreciated a little more, but you're not, unfortunately, and that's just the way maybe the industry is. Again, like I won't use any names or anything, but it came to just a point where the foreman stepped down and a new foreman was put in, and it just seemed like the whole cycle was restarting again, and it was just like, oh, I've seen this before. I don't want to go through it again. I think it's time to do my own thing or try anyways, and then just quit and went and bought a truck at the worst possible time.
Why was it a bad time?
Just the market for
Okay.
used trucks anyways.
Yeah.
Like
You paid high.
when I went to go paid high, couldn't find, well, I didn't pay, well, maybe I did, yeah, but I couldn't find one to save my life. So, but I ended up finding one.
And you wanted it anyway. You wanted it bad enough. You knew it was expensive, but you're like, I got to transition. I got to get into my own thing.
Yeah, like
So knowing what you know now, if you describe it to someone that is asking you like, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting into this business," like what's the biggest advantage of being on your own?
I think you can take pride in being like, you've built this, and like you can stand on your own 2 feet. You can acquire the tooling or the necessary bits you need to make your life easier.
What about
Like you can gain all the financial means you can to do that as well. You don't have to try to go through someone to do that. Like you can do as you need, as you see fit.
did taxes, or do you know that yet? Did taxes play, a role in, the attractiveness of, obviously as an employee working as many hours as you did, you probably pay a lot of tax, right?
Oh, for sure.
So are you incorporated in your new gig? Is it
Yeah.
okay, cool. And so that's a different tax rate completely, right?
Oh, completely different. That's something entirely that I'm still learning about on my own. So, hiring someone to do it I try to understand the best of it as I can, but like I guess that's why you hire people outsourced to do things like that. So,
And so what's the biggest misconception that you've learned so far from, let's say, the mechanic who worked at the dealer for 10, 15 years and it's like, I'm going on my own. I've been thinking about it for the last 5 years. I'm going to go on my own. I don't know if you're this experienced yet on your own, but what would you say if someone was going to ask you, what might I not be thinking about? What advice can you give me when I do go on my own? Am I missing something? Is it as good as they say?
like have more money than whatever amount of money you think you're going to need, like double it for sure.
Okay. For the slow times, right?
Well, for the slow times, especially getting started, like in this industry, like it's expensive. Like as that, like I'm sure they know, like coming up, but like now that you're on your own, like you can't go to your boss and be like, hey, I need a new 1-inch gun, or like I need a 2 and 3/16 socket. Like you got to either acquire that yourself or sometimes build it on the fly, and like you need the financial means to do that. And then when breaks, like you're paying for it.
What are some of the challenges that you're running into now, having recently gone on your own? Obviously, the financial element of bookkeeping and stuff. Do you got that all figured out, or is that one of the challenges too?
I outsourced that to an accountant and a bookkeeper, so that seems to be okay. I definitely paid more than I wanted to my first year, but you're always looking to improve and do better, keeping your receipts, bookkeeping, and doing things along those lines.
Yeah, and then how about billing your clients too? Is that a challenge for you? You got that figured out? Is that part of that bookkeeping and accounting thing?
So billing, it's hard, I find, because the clients I've normally dealt with, like I've dealt with Sherway Construction, which is a big outfit, they didn't really care. Like whatever you worked, you billed and they paid, and they didn't question an invoice at all. But then when I've done work for smaller clients and everything, you got to be a little more reasonable of your time, and I think a little bit of take and give, right? But not like to give your time away. I think you just need to explain to them why it took this a certain amount of time and why you've done it this way, and just being more advantageous towards their needs. And like downtime is a bigger deal to them for sure, and cost of the repair.
Being your own boss, or having your own company, you don't just have to go do the work, but you also have to make sure stuff gets invoiced, and all that extra time involved in making sure you get paid, right? So it's one thing for a client to question the bill, and you've obviously been writing stories for years now, so that's just part of the job. But do you find that the extra admin work that maybe a service manager would have been doing before, do you find that's like an extra load of work on that you really don't bill for, right? But you got to do it
Yeah,
anyway. Do you find that is challenging, or is it kind of just part of invoicing and you've always kind of done it?
I've always kind of done it. But it's funny when you look at like the admin side of things. It's like, well, how have they done it? So they were like, why are there so many people in the office, and how are they able to bill for all this time
Yeah.
and still be profitable, right? Like I always look back and it's like, okay, well, there was so many people in the office and there's only so many people on the floor. How are we supporting everything?
Yeah.
So it's just an added to my plate, right? Unless I come to the point where you obviously hire someone to do that.
You're invoicing, that's doesn't not a big deal to you. You're invoicing your clients. It's like, cool, it's just part of it. You wouldn't, because for some guys it
No,
is.
no,
Okay. So
it
it's
is a big deal. It is a big deal. I would
okay.
like to eventually take it off my plate for sure.
So have a service writer, someone, that you could pay, whether it's part-time or whatever, every couple days, a week, they would go and invoice the clients. Is that safe to assume?
Yeah,
Some people don't find it a problem. Other guys I've talked to, they're like, man, that's the worst part of it. The accounting and bookkeeping, invoicing, like I don't want anything to do with it. Some guys, their wives help them, their families help them. Some
yeah,
people pay a company to take care of it, whether it's $1,000 or $2,000 a month to just be a contract, manage the bookkeeping, make sure you're getting paid, make sure your clients aren't 90 and 120 days overdue.
yeah,
That is just a fact of running your own show, and it's something that I think probably a lot of people realize but want to ignore until it gets too bad that they realize that they don't have any money, but it's because either they haven't invoiced properly or haven't collected.
yeah,
But the quality of clients is also very important. Like you said, you have certain clients that they appreciate what you do, and there's other clients that look at every single hour, half an hour you spent, and question everything, and suspicious or whatever. You want to feel appreciated too, right? And
yeah.
you do good work, and presumably you're honest about how you bill. And yeah, that's funny because that's a common thing too. I've heard mechanics all over North America. It's like it's kind of a not a thankless job, because you know that there's certain people, like we said, that they understand the value in what you do and they appreciate you, right? Because it's broken when you arrive and it's fixed when you're done.
hmm
That must be satisfying, isn't it?
it's It is. It's the most satisfying thing ever.
So right now, are you at 50% capacity? Could you take on a bunch more work? What's your goals?
See, like I've just kind of ran with this and it's just continued to grow. Like I don't ever whatever plan I seem to try to make, it never ever happens and I kind of just it just falls apart, but like something always seems to happen and I just keep going. So I have two trucks now and I started out with none and I'm almost at the point like I have capacity. Like I'm currently not working at the moment. I'm almost done building this new one that I have. So I'm kind of because Tony doesn't start up until till the spring, till March, and then. But if I could find something where I could maybe try something a little more from home, yeah. Like I'm full capacity at the moment. Like I could take on anything.
Okay, so ideally you'd want to work close to home because when you go up there, it's very far away and it's for a long period of time. And for good and for bad, it's just a different experience. Is it safe to
Yeah,
assume that you would like to find something, year round close to home?
eventually, yeah, yeah.
And so eventually, like year, 2, 3, 4 years,
I think a year or two maybe would be ideal.
ideal because you're being realistic about how long it might take to gather and a good client base in your local area. And is that why, or would you do it now if you thought it was sustainable?
The problem I have is because I'm trying to be as technology advanced as I can, and maybe I haven't found the right person because I'm trying like where I'm trying to beat the dealers is with like you need a computer to plug into everything now,
Yeah,
and like you're really naked without it.
yeah,
So like I put a Starlink on my service truck now to have
cool.
internet connection because you need that nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to I buy com adapters and buy programs and the only problem I have with the certain guy I'm with now is he doesn't always answer the phone and that's the one thing I'm concerned about. So maybe I need to get on the phone a little more and see because all those guys do is they team viewer it, right? And then they're like they either fix the problem or they don't. That allows me to communicate with the machine or the engine control module, whatever I need to do the job. Because I that's where I find the biggest problem is. And I don't know if I can because I like to be fair and honest with the customers, and it's not their fault that they called someone out that doesn't have the ability
Yeah.
to connect to their machine to fix their broken unit, right? So there would be a lot of costs that I would have to eat because it's not fair to them. Like it's and competition wise. So that's why if I could get everything ironed out and have the funds to do that, then I think it would be a little more probable or realistic sense to be running in town.
Okay, got it. So go and work hard out of town, save up money, buy the tools you need to be able to compete with the dealers locally.
Yeah.
That sounds good. That sounds logical. So you think right now, if you had those tools, if they magically appeared in your truck, you think that you wouldn't need to go out of town because there's enough work locally. Is that
I think so. Like I haven't advertised maybe you say like an insecurity or a fear of of rejection in a sense because like your word is everything and then like obviously reputation is also everything too to do that. So to have all those tools that would be fantastic to do and to have and then but that comes across the next part of wearing to how to resource the work and then filter through all those clients, right? And to have the good ones and get rid of the bad ones if you want to go that way.
what's your current billable rate for, let's just say, an excavator is down in the middle of the city or outside of the city?
So like I haven't really done that in town, like I've had guys that have come to me and like I fix their stuff and I kind of just charge them whatever, but like when the last contract I was going was with Tony and I was doing 150 an hour.
Okay. And that's up there. And that doesn't matter how much you work. If you work, 14 hours in a day, you're billing 150 straight. Is there
Yeah.
overtime rates or no?
No, there was
Okay.
no overtime rate or anything like that.
Okay.
And
And so in town, what do you think? Let's just say you were fully tooled up. Whether you have to skip forward 2 years, say you've got a truck and you got tools and you've got the technology that you need to compete with the dealers, with whatever dealer. Right now, why do you think people wouldn't call the dealer? Why do you think there's obviously space for you? Is it just a price thing because you're slightly cheaper? Or is there really a lack of people at the dealer? Because I've heard people have to wait weeks to months to get stuff serviced or fixed with the dealers.
I think there's just a lack of people.
Yeah. Okay, so it's the same situation where you are there. It's like people will call you even on their newer Cat Gear or Deer or Volvo or whatever because you could probably do it quicker. Is that correct?
I think you said like the speed of it to have someone available to go out and fix that.
And would you say cost is secondary then, right?
It almost seems to be that way. Yeah. I don't think guys will skimp out on, you won't have people out there to skimp out on pay. Like people will pay you to do a good job and to get it done. Like I think it's unreal, right? Like I don't think people need to, some guys I talk to that are independent, they have such low rates and it's like you're worth way more than that. Like you have no idea.
Yeah, you almost wonder. It's like they don't. And do you think that's a confidence thing too? Because obviously you don't want to rip people off, and you want to make a good living.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I wonder that too because I know guys that charge 130 an hour and 120 an hour. I mean, they mostly aren't 120 anymore, but and then you've got guys that are 160 or 150 and they're
Hmm.
almost equally equipped, but maybe it's confidence. I don't know. Like I don't understand. I'm not saying they should all be the same rate, but maybe when times are bad, obviously, clients might want to save 40 bucks an hour or 30 bucks an hour, right? So you haven't done any marketing. You think you need more tools. I mean, if you knew what you were fixing, you didn't need the diagnostic equipment, you could go and do work locally right now, right?
I could probably do work locally right now. Yeah. Cause I have a lot of the 1 inch guns and like I have multiple 1 inch guns, large sockets, torches, a small welder. Yeah, I have like all the basic hand tools, grinders, and like all that sort of stuff. It's just I really, and then adding the Starlink, and I have a lot of the comm adapters. It's just the matter of the communication and how good the scan tool does. But yeah,
But if you're going to go like give me an example of a job that is a common type of repair, whether it's 1 day or 10 days, that you could do as good or better than the dealer. Undercarriage, engine
yeah,
replacement, pump replacement,
yeah,
cylinder repair, rebuild seals. I don't know. You name it. Like you're equipped. Like you don't need diagnostic tools for certain things, right?
right.
So can you do most stuff, or aside from diagnostic stuff, what do you need? Like do you just need more tools? Like I guess everyone needs more tools, but
Yeah.
are you able to do most stuff that you'd get called for?
Oh, I would think so for the most stuff you get called for, because normally someone's going to call you normally for like a oil change. You go out, change your oil, and then usually I always find it turns into something more. It's like, oh well, I have this noise, or well, it's doing that, or sometimes it does this, or this leaks. Like, could you have a look at that? So I could probably do the majority of the things.
Cool. And then if you had a magic wand and you could make something happen to help your company grow or whatever, what would you do? If you could achieve something like overnight, what would it be?
Achieve something overnight.
Yeah, magic wand, make something happen.
I think having the confidence just to do it right, because like you said, everything is based on confidence, and like everything I've done to this point has always been taking steps towards what I've been doing, and taking the next big step would be to do it in town, right? Like to have your name running around town. and to have the confidence to do that. But then I know once you jump into it, like, the ocean seems so deep, but it never was, right? Like, so I think it's just the matter of me to go and do it, to be
So
honest.
so is it safe to assume that you take that Yukon job because you're obviously experienced enough to do it, but there aren't a lot of people who are, I say, responsible enough and knowledgeable enough that is willing to put up with the working conditions. It's not, bad, but it's different. It's a different gig. It requires a special person to be up there, right? Especially for that period of time. So, do you think that because you've done stuff like that before and you're willing to be uncomfortable and put in situations, that you're like, well, I'm willing to do it and they're willing to give me the work, so I'm going to go do that. But if I could, I would do it locally because ultimately you want to be local, right? But you're just not confident enough. Does that make sense what I just said?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't take it lightly. Like, these machines, like, I know, like, there's big companies out there that are massive and they make gross profits and everything, but, like, again, like, Tony Beats is, he's been doing it for 25 years, and, like, again, like, it's family owned. Like, those people invited me into their house, essentially. Like, that's their machinery that feeds, like, puts food in their mouths. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and there's points where everything's broken, and it's like, well, could I do that in town? Like, we're like, again, same thing. Like, it's probably going to be a lot of small companies, like, and to misdiagnose something, or to fuck up in a sense. Like, I don't take that lightly.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, from your perspective, do it while you can, as long as you can. It's obviously seasonal too,
Yeah.
from basically from March or April till October.
Hmm.
Um, and so, it's if you can do it and you like it and the experience that you gain as well, you probably get a lot of experience out there, right?
Yeah.
If you go out there for the next couple years, from an experience perspective, I think that would be excellent. But the problem is we get people with Tekamo, with the Tekamo network, we get people that are like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm in town for like 2 weeks, or I'm in town for the next 3 months, but I'm gone for the next 9. It's hard to rely on someone that's not always going to be there and knowing that you're
Right.
right. So if you want to build up a client base in town over the winter from October to March or whatever, when stuff presumably is slower, sure, you could do that. But most companies, including ourselves, like we would give you work, if it's project based, like, oh, we need undercarriage here, but why wouldn't I give that to my regular guy? Right?
Right.
You kind of like, I'm not telling you and you're not asking me, but I would think that if you're going to set something up in town, you kind of got to make a commitment.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you don't have to do it yet, then you don't have to do it. Like, I also think for someone your age to go up north and to work there for 5 months, a year, whatever it is, and make good money, right?
Yeah.
You get good experience, you'll meet good people, you'll learn lots, and you'll make good money. And you'll come home and you do that enough, you'll have a lot of time to think, right? About what you
Yeah.
want to build and then slowly build what you're doing. Cause you made the comment that it's not, stuff isn't happening quick enough. I think that's the case. I think a lot of people feel that way. You just got to be patient, right? Because what are you building? That's the thing you got to ask yourself. What is your goal? What's your 5-year goal? Do you want to have people working for you?
That was the original plan. Yeah.
And so if you don't know where you want to go or where you want to be, any road will take you there, right? I don't know who said that, but that's a quote. It makes a lot of sense, right? So
Yeah.
if you can envision, it's simple. Like, I want 3 service trucks. By the year 2030, I want 3 service trucks or 5 service trucks. I want to have a service area of 100-mile radius. I want to work in forestry and construction and mining because there's all that stuff in your area. And I want to employ 5 people, including 1 office person and 4 mechanics or maybe 1 parts guy, whatever. It's not that hard to imagine, right? Yeah, I think you just got to build that vision And then it's a hell of a lot easier once you know where you want to be to like
Yeah.
make the steps to get there, right? Do you have any questions for me before we end the call?
You've made me think a lot. Like, I wish I could talk to someone like you on more of a regular basis, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You know what you should do? Come up with a list of questions and then we'll have another call. We'll record it. And maybe the questions that you have will be a lot of questions that other people have. So making a podcast out of it would be good because ultimately we want to help guys like you build their businesses, whether we're involved or not. We just want to help inspire the next generation of mechanics and be as good as you want to be. Like some people don't want to build a big company. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Some people want to be a one-man show. That's absolutely fine. One thing that a lot of people don't know is they don't know they want to be in the construction industry. They don't know because they don't know. So we want to kind
Yeah.
of show them what's possible. And it's through people like you telling your story that will help people realize that maybe this is something for them.
Is that how you found Cam? Or did Cam find you? How did that work?
Cam and I had a conversation one day a few years ago, and we were doing the YouTube thing, and then he started fixing our equipment. We started filming with him. I mean, that's very oversimplifying it. But through that, Cam's built his business. He's doing very well.
Hmm.
Cam did that himself, right? He built his company because he had something in mind and he worked his ass off for it. Anyone can do that, right?
Yeah.
You just need to be persistent.
Right.
Most guys that will last in this business are not the type that want to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch sports all day long, right? They want to get done. They like
Yeah.
fixing stuff.
Yeah.
They like remaining active. I think the biggest thing is like, work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
But they want a good life for their families, right?
Yeah.
And they're willing to work for it. And man, if you don't enjoy what you do, you should quit now. I mean, maybe
Oh,
that's really advice. I don't know. But if you in general, like obviously we all have days, but if you don't like what you're doing, you really need to figure something else out.
that's 100%. Like, couldn't have said that better. Going from our conversation, from what we had, knowing on look, like, I know you can't really over like a course of an hour know someone, but like out of the experience I've had and what I've done, what do you think my best plan of action would be to go ahead and maybe run in town?
Like what it sounds like to me, you're cautious, but you're not as confident as you need to be. But you
Hmm.
also know if I was going to start again, or if you're going to give advice to other people, you'd say like whatever money you think you need, double it, right? So
Yeah.
you clearly have enough experience to know that. It all depends on your family situation, man. There's so many questions that I would have to ask you. Like, do you have kids? Are you married? What are your plans with that? How old are you? What do you want to do? Like, what is your like? Look, like the fact is, you said it yourself. Things never go to plan, right? Like
Yeah.
you can make a business plan. I don't care what you say. It never will work out. But you can kind of like draw out the outline of it and make it work. But how you get there, you bounce back and forth. And I think that the biggest thing for you is to imagine where you want to be in a few years. Like just say 5 years. Like just imagine like how many trucks do you want? You've worked with other people before. You know the personalities of people you'll work with, right? You've worked with people at dealers. Maybe those guys, maybe you're going to be like, hey, I've got these big clients and I need a few more employees. Like, do you want to come and work with me? And
Hmm.
maybe they're like, yeah, man, I'm done with this dealer or done at this company. Like, I'd love to come and work with you. But just you need to think about what is ideal for you. So right now, where do you want to be? Do you want to shop? Do you want trucks?
Yeah. Yeah. I would
Right?
like a shop. Yeah.
Where do you want your shop? Is it, are you going to buy a farm outside the city a bit? You can build a huge shop. You can run your stuff from there. The minute you tell yourself, well, I can't do that, or I can't do that, the number one advice I would have for anyone without knowing anything about you is the minute
Hmm.
you're going to start saying, have a dream, like you're dreaming right now. You're visualizing what you think you would want, right? And the minute you
Yeah.
say, oh, I can't do that, or I won't be able to do that, then that's not going to happen. because you just said you won't be able to or you can't. So just
Right.
the best thing to do is to just visualize. Maybe you've already done it. Maybe you could be like, yeah, this is what I want, because you just visualized it in 2 seconds. That's cool. Like, because you've been thinking
Yeah.
about it. But visualize, your shop, your trucks, your staff, your office. And then when you think, are you going to have a family? Then you start making the logical steps to help you get there. And some people spend their lives saving up for a down payment to realize that 20 years down the road, they still don't have a house because, the houses are appreciating faster than they can save money, right? And then
Yeah.
they look back and said, I wish I just, didn't want to save up and just got in when I could. But so you can spend your life planning and thinking about stuff, or you can just start doing it now, right? I
Yeah.
don't mean like jump off into the water without knowing how to swim, because that
Yeah.
won't end good. And then once you're gonna be like, hey, here's what I think I want to do, and like actually think about it, because I'll ask you questions about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then maybe I'll be able to suggest, what I would do if I was in your situation. I'm not gonna tell anyone what to do. There's a million ways to skin a cat and to get to where you want to be, right? So
Yeah.
thanks for your time. It's almost
Yeah.
been a couple hours, but let's definitely, if you come up with questions, or other people that have questions too, and it aligns with kind of the questions that you have too, let's have another call. And that would be cool to just go through them and help build that picture, help what the plan might be to get there, right?
For sure. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, you bet, Kevin. Thank you.
We've only just started digging into Josh's story. Catch us next time as we dive into his next big chapter and chat about tools and tricks that keep him rolling. Stay curious, keep learning, and take care.